Hi everyone and welcome to my talk. In this session, I'm going to focus on teaching, or better say guiding, in a Montessori distance learning environment. And we're going to see what the challenges and opportunities are for the virtual Montessori guides. In this world of continuous changes, where the teaching process is no longer occurring in a classroom context, Montessori guides and students must be ready to adapt to a new form of teaching and learning. Psychologist Zygmunt Bauman talks about liquid modernity, which is synonym to adaptability, flexibility, marked by the information revolution, in contrast with solid modernity, and generally, in case of education, hasn't changed considerably in the last decades. COVID-19 has accelerated our transition to liquid lives, and education was on one of the sectors that had to make a quick transition. In Montessori classrooms, the beautiful and prepared environment had to become overnight an online workspace. Many questions arose, and many others will still arise. But one thing is sure, teaching had to change. In this context, Montessori guides and Montessori school owners had to take some decisions to ensure a good transition. How to present sensory lessons. How to communicate with parents in the context of distance teaching. What about the social emotional issues? How do we motivate the children in the new context? How do we still follow them? What about the use of technology? How much daily connection according to children's age? Are Montessori materials replaceable? What about my future as a Montessori guide? What about children's needs at each stage of development? How can human tendencies be covered at each stage? What about my future as a Montessori school owner? What learning management system should we use? Will children have more possibilities to be enrolled to Montessori schools? What is the future of education? With all these questions in mind, I interviewed some Montessori teachers and Montessori school owners, and they share their experience as passing through online teaching. These experiences have been recorded, and I would like to share them with you. And here we are with Dira. Dira, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Oana. Yes, of course. My name is Dira Suwondo, and I am from Indonesia, Jakarta, and I'm a school owner of Sekolah Montessori Taman Tumbuh. In English, it says the Montessori School of Taman Tumbuh. Taman means garden, and tumbuh means growing. So we are taking it in philosophical way, the growing garden. So this is a new school started in 2017, and after 3 years we have one class for the 3 to 6, and this year we are starting the elementary class.
Okay. And I would like to ask you, how was your experience when you had to pass from classroom teaching to online teaching?
Well,
Yeah.
definitely it was like how to say it? It was a tough moment for all of us. I'm sure for everybody around the world, because first of all, we have to continue the learning experience for the children. Uh, we believe even though they are at home, they still have to receive the guidance to let them studying or learning or working. And it was a real challenge because with children cannot go to the school, and there was no real interaction with the teachers. And we know that teacher is so important in setting the environment, right? In giving the facilitating to the children. So the first thing that we realize that the role of the teacher is kind of shifting to the parents, and that's the first thing that we realize, and we try to make the parents also understand there was a shifting there was a shifting role, in a sense that because of the teacher cannot be close with the student anymore. So for us it was really important to empower the parents first. So the first 3 months, to be honest, it was quite how to say, it was quite
Chaotic?
yeah, chaotic, because like we try quite a lot of different ways to reach the children, especially because the young ones, it was for them it was very hard to be in the screen, right?
Yeah.
As you know, like for the young children to stay still 2-3 minutes in front of the screen, it was hard. So we try a lot of things, and then uh, after a lot of things done, then we understand that it's not so much bringing everything into the screen, but then how to bridge the learning experience that the children normally receive in the school. Now they can have it in their house, in their homes. And to do that, then we have to again train the parents. So one big change in our school after the COVID moment, we gave a lot of parents training once a week that time, and in the hope that we could help the parents to prepare the environment. All right. And once they got the idea about prepare the environment in the house, then the other things can go in parallel. Okay. So, so yes, the first step, empowering the parents, and the second step after everything is ready is a lot better. Then we design the uh, the the learning experience uh, in such a way that it's not only just online but also offline. So
So how did you
we
replace the materials in this way?
yes, so we analyze what
Mhm.
are the things that make children want to work at
Mhm.
home, right? And we know that one thing, they need material.
Yes.
So at first, because our school in Taman Tumbuh, we have this mission that we do not charge the price high.
Yeah.
So it's quite a reasonable price. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that, then we don't have that much budget. So
Okay.
for the first 3 months, we push the parents to use whatever they have at home that
Mm-hmm.
can be used, especially for the practical life, right? Practical
Yeah.
life and sensorial. Yeah. But after the first 3 months, and after we learn that we will not return to school in a short term,
Mm-hmm.
it will be prolonged. So we know that there are some materials that specific Montessori apparatus that children also need.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, we decide to give to purchase the materials with our budget for the children. So we send the materials to home. Yeah. After the first, after the first 3 months, the following period, we send two types of materials. One is the specific Montessori apparatus, such as cylinder block. Yeah. Uh, but then, so that was only for once in a term
Mm-hmm.
because it's expensive. But the other materials that we send home are the more for like the cultural or for the language. So things that we can produce by ourselves. And
Okay.
yeah, so that way the parents feel much more supported
Mm-hmm.
compared to the first 3 months because uh, most parents, even though they are at home, but they still do their work, right? So they are also actually busy.
Yes.
So we understand that, and we tell the parents that we hope that with these materials we can take some of the burdens off from the parents, but also we teach them how to actually make by themselves and
Mm.
also use it at home. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the main message we want to uh, have it uh, conveyed to the parents is that we really want to empower the parents, and then we feel that this difficult time is actually a perfect time for parents really finally understand what Montessori is all about,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Because this is like everybody is being forced, like before I think most parents just leave everything to the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now they have to do it, otherwise the children will not have the
We'll miss.
wonderful time, yeah, the wonderful time at home. And me, uh, as a principal, I tell my parents that yes, this is a difficult time, but we have to remember we must protect our children, and we should not deny their rights to still get the education they need, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that we still have to fight for whatever we can for them.
Hmm.
And that the first thing comes from setting the right mindset.
Yes.
Yes.
So, what do you think is going to be the future of education? Do you think it's going to be virtual? Like, if you have to choose? In your case, you don't, right? Because otherwise, virtual, you'll have to buy all the material and send it at home to the children. So,
Well, I think uh, virtual education. Well, the way I see it is virtual is just a way, is a means. It's not
yeah.
the end itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the same out as our uh, view for the technology, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a way to help us. And because of the situation like now, so we have to be virtual.
Yes.
But again, we have to see what the children need and what's good for them for their age now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm personally not very fond of spending hours in on the screen,
Yes.
right? It's not
Especially
healthy.
for this age, for the second stage of development, first stage of development. Sorry. Yeah, I
Yes,
think it's very
yes,
important not to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think if we talk about future, I think virtual is just part of it, but more on the sense that parents must take more, how to say it, happiness in being with their children, right?
Okay.
Because that is the ultimate education that
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us must realize from now, that even us as school, we
Mm-hmm.
should not take uh, so much responsibility in our hands. We have to empower the parents
Okay,
to
okay.
make them
Mhm.
able to do what they are supposed to do with their children, just
Okay.
like what we do with the children, right?
Yes.
So I believe in the future there are more freedom in
Mm-hmm.
education,
Mm-hmm.
and I really hope that parents by this COVID experience will have the chance to reevaluate what's actually been happening in their children's school life,
Mm-hmm.
and so be prepared to give more what the children need.
Okay.
Virtual is just one thing, but I think it's more on the experience,
So
the total experience.
you mean like parents should connect more with their children than children should connect with the internet, let's say.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, that is like the ultimate.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
you're very right. Okay, thank you so much, Dira, for sharing your experience with us. And
Yes.
we'll get
Same
soon in
here.
touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hello, and we're here with Felicia. And yeah, Felicia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Felicia. My full name is Felicia Zulhendri. I am originally from Indonesia, and um, 14 years ago, I moved to the United States. And since then, I've been living in the United States. I am 0 to 3 trained as well as 3 to 6 AMI trained Montessori teacher. And I'm currently taking my elementary training, AMI elementary training here at the CISM in Bergamo in Italy with Oana. So yeah.
Okay, Felicia, I would like to ask you, how was your experience when you had to pass from the classroom teaching to the online teaching? Like, how were those first moments?
Yeah, we went, so we were the very first school that closed down and went on lockdown. Um, so we didn't have a whole lot of resources at the time, but in general, I think it's just like anyone else. I felt very uncertain. At the time, we're just trying to focus on how we can be helpful and how can I be useful to my community. So at the time, I was just thinking a lot about, okay, what are the purpose of the children's development at the time, and then at this age group, what do they need and what will they be missing by not being able to come to school? And what are their strengths and what are their sensitivities during this time. So I think we're just trying to do a lot of thinking of how can I serve the community at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that time, everything is just so uncertain, and being able to, our focus was just being able to give certain kind of um, routine and order for the children, because suddenly everything changed so quickly without any
Mm-hmm.
warning. So yeah, at the time we're just trying to focus on like how can we serve the communities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And from your experience that you've been through, do you think that materials can be replaceable, like materials from the classroom, from the Montessori classroom?
No. So I think the we were on virtual schooling for like, I was from mid-March all the way until May. And then by that time, we're starting to realize that, okay, how are we going to provide this for the children? And the more we provide, the more we realize that no, the materials are absolutely very crucial at the time. And we're just, I mean, if we think about the children's sensitive period at the time for 3 to 6 particularly, they need order, they need routine of the classroom, they need hand movement, and hand work and movement, as well as they're at the peak of their language development and social development, and then all of that sensory motor learning that they need to get. And a lot of the things we're not able to provide for them through the virtual learning, but we did make the best out of what we can at the time. So I would say that it's not replaceable, but at the same time, we were able to provide the best for that particular circumstances.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And do you consider that communication with parents had changed in virtual learning, let's say?
Yeah, so during that time, we decided that we're going to do a lot of kind of an open forum. So through Zooms, like in the morning. So I provide like one in the morning every day, and then one in the afternoon, in the evening every day, because many of the parents are still working. So we wanted to be able to make sure that we provide that sense of community to let the parents know that they're not alone. And many of the school that I was a part of at the time that I was working at, they have Nido all the way to elementary at the time. So many of the parents had never had their children at home that much because they started at Nido, their children started at Nido. And then, so all of a sudden they have their children all the time with them and they don't know what to do. So a lot of that time my role came in a part of like a lot more of supporting parents at home instead of being with the children. So it's kind of like providing that sense of community for the parents and open communications. And I felt a lot closer to my parents more than ever, just because we're not just seeing each other during drop off and pick up anymore or like through emails, but it's more of like in their home settings. And then the parents are able to communicate with each other. So it was actually making I feel a little closer to the parents, and yeah, and just giving them a lot of tools and resources on how to provide the environment that still promote independence and also continuous learning without making them feel that they have to do it all, because there's a lot of them are still working.
Yeah.
So yeah, so my role becomes this provider of like resources and then tools for them to cope at home and to be able to still support their children.
And what do you think about the use of technology? Because you said like you were connecting like twice a day. And how long were these sessions?
So for the parents, we do like half an hour in the morning and then half an hour in the evening. And then we also did a virtual gathering for the children. So my days start, our classroom has like one early in the morning where the whole class join for about 25 to 30 minutes, depending on the topic that we're talking about during that time. And then in the afternoon, we had an hour session for the older children because they can stay a little longer for that afternoon session. So it's mimicking sort of the morning work period and then afternoon work period, like sort of that. And it also helps the parents to kind of like set a routine and schedule for the children indirectly. So yeah, it was the best that we could do at the time. To answer your questions, like regarding technology, we didn't have any other options to connect with each other at the time. So that was like the best thing that we could do. So in the sense that I'm grateful that we're in this age where we could still see each other, even though we can't meet in person. So that was like the best thing that we could do. But it's obviously it's not ideal.
Yeah, that's not the idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about like following the child and, motivate them, inspire them? What can you say about this?
Yeah, so a lot of our work, so I was lucky that I had a few assistant teachers that we were working together to kind of develop this, I don't want to say curriculum, but more of like an idea or plan on what we wanted to talk to the children about. So we created a certain kind of a ritual for the children. So that helps a lot for the children. And also we were able to provide like continuous learning depending on what we wanted to provide. So it's like a little bit of gardening here and there, a little bit of baking here and there, a little bit of drawing. So all of those handwork that they're missing, that we're able to kind of do it together in the virtual settings. Yeah, so that helps. And then a little bit of music. Sudar actually came, my husband Sudar actually came in and sing with the children and introduced guitar, and just being able to provide that enrichment for the children. So
yeah, all the resources available at you.
Yeah, anything that we could do at that time to just be able to provide for the children.
I'm thinking that you're 3 to 6, you were 3 to 6 that time. What do you think about sensorial and like practical life activities? Because there are like two like next to them in the class, but at home, it's such a different use that you can make of this.
Yeah, so we communicate a lot with the parents of what our plan is for the week ahead of time, so that parents can help us provide the materials. So during that virtual gathering, so like you said, a lot of things that are missing are a lot of their handwork and a lot of their sensorial like experience, like sensorial materials in the classroom that we can't replicate at home. So what we did was a lot of, so like in practical life, some of us plan on gardening with like very simple materials like Q-tip and small jar, and then planting seeds and, you know, the back end of the vegetables and celery and all of that. And then also we provide baking together. So we ask parents to provide the materials, the ingredients at home, and then what they need, and then we're baking together in the kitchen. So that helps parents to kind of learn how to work with their children and how to involve the children more in their day-to-day life, because learning doesn't just happen at school. You know, they can do a lot at home. So that was kind of eye-opening for a lot of the parents, that they didn't realize that, you know, we talk a lot about independence, but in reality, the practicality, how do they do it at home? So by doing this virtual learning at home, the parents actually able to see it of how they can do it at home. So that was really, really helpful. And then a part of the, for the sensorial part, you know, we can't replicate color tablets, or we can't replicate, you know, puzzle maps and all of that at home, but we're able to kind of do a lot of, we use like just this paint color that I have, and then just showing the children that, okay, what color is this, and then this is red, can you bring something from your home that has red? And then they just go on and search their environment, and then still have that connection as a classroom, and bringing in material, bringing in what they can find at their home. So those kinds of like activities that we do a lot during our virtual gathering, that helps the children. And funny thing is, so during the afternoon, we do more toward language work, and more toward math work, and more toward geography, the puzzle map. And then some of the conversation among the older children in the afternoon was like, all of a sudden they were talking about, maybe we should go to Japan together, maybe we should go here together. And then it becomes this really beautiful connection among the children that we don't really talk about when we're in the classroom, and somehow there's this sense of connection when we do it virtually. So I guess there's like this, you know, positive, and then there's this negative, but we did really make the best out of it.
That's so good. Yeah.
I
can see like technology, sometimes it's also at work, not just,
Right.
And yeah, the last question, let's say, do you think the future, what do you think about the future of education? Do you think it's going to be virtual? If we are going to be able to choose between like classroom and virtual, do you think it's going to be virtual?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen, but not for the 0 to 6 for sure, because I think now we know even more that the children need the prepared environment even more, right? Like when they stay at home, the parents starting to realize that, no, they need to be among their friends. They need to be in this environment that are prepared, especially for their development. So I wouldn't say that the future would be virtual for 0 to 6. And I think the beauty of this Montessori education is that this is based on scientific observation of Dr. Montessori, and then this is a time-tested principles that it doesn't matter, it's universal the principle is universal and it's time tested. So anywhere in the world, we know that children need the environment, children needs to use their hand, children need to move, children need someone that know something about what, understand them, understand what they need, and understand what they're sensitive toward and how they learn, and all of that things that we know from our training. So yeah, definitely 0 to like children, especially in the children's house age group, needs the prepared environment for their development. Yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
Well, thank you, Felicia, for sharing your experience.
yeah. I hope it helps everyone that are going through
Sure will
this.
help, because everybody has been through an experience, but it's for me at least, it's interesting to see other experiences also. Yeah,
it's a very, very weird time. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes,
It's so good talking to you.
hello, we're online here with Stefan, who's a Montessori teacher in elementary in Valencia, but let me ask you to introduce yourself if you want.
Hello, my name is Stefan. I'm a Montessori guide at Valencia Montessori School in Spain. I'm working with a group of 17 children currently in the upper elementary classroom, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes. Okay, so I would like to ask you, how was your experience when you had to pass from classroom teaching to the online teaching? Like the first moments, I mean, like how was it like? How was for you? How did you deal with?
We had this change. It was not very clear what it was going to happen. We went for a holiday before the state of emergency was declared in Spain. Okay. So in that moment, I thought like, in that week before the holiday, I thought like, okay, we should have something to stay together. For me, one of the key elements of a Montessori classroom and environment is the community. Mm-hmm. So I had the idea, okay, even if we go back to school for this week, in the case we will have to stay at home, we should have some tools to stay together. So we set up an environment using an application called CISO. It was very basic, but the idea was for the children during this week to share things that they did at home. So their own works from home. So to create the spirit of community. Okay. So this is how we went to the lockdown. We had no idea.
Yeah, but do you think is the Montessori material replaceable for the second stage of development?
No, I do not think that we should. I think online education is great, especially with Montessori principles. Mm-hmm. But I do not really think that we should try to create materials at home and do the work at home with the materials. I think that we should separate clearly our ideas and when it concerns like online education. Mm-hmm. And then we can have different approaches. You can have an approach, for example, when online learning just replaces a period of the time that you cannot be in the classroom. Yeah. And for that moment, you can have some specific ideas. And then you can have online school as something that is going on, like it's the standard. Then we can maybe take ideas from Montessori and create an online environment to teach, but that's something very different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what about the communication with parents? Did it improve somehow, or you had to communicate more with them, like in order to teach them somehow, or it was necessary?
Yes, I tried to include everyone. A community is not only the children, but it's everyone, parents, teachers, children, it's like everyone that participates. So I had to share with them that now that they are in this different moment, their role has to be a little bit different than what it was before. And I tried to kind of guide them on how they could support their children, because they might have a wrong idea of what it means to be independent. Independent in the Montessori classroom, it doesn't mean to be let alone, but it means to have the freedom to do things with the support in case you need it. So this was a challenge for many families, that they thought that their children are independent and just lock them in a room with a computer. And there is where we had to do a lot of work. At the end of this experience, after the 3 months, 4 months that we stayed in a lockdown, we created a video with 7 questions of how was their experience, and then we edited together and we shared it inside of the community. It was surprising to see that everyone had the same challenges. So this is another way to unite the community and to make them understand that we are all the same, that we all fight the same things, and that together we can share ideas in order to support everyone in the community. Everyone felt bad at some moments and everyone had good moments. So that was
a great idea. And how do you motivate children online? Can you motivate them somehow?
Of course, there are like lots of interesting tools. Children they have this interest for everything that surrounds them. What's great about Montessori education is that the Montessori education, Montessori looked at what it was normal, at what was the reality around, and then it modeled the education according to the reality, not the other way around, to try to bend the reality into what they thought it was education. So understanding the interests of the children at that age, then you can offer them activities or projects or ideas that they can in which they can work together, and online is great for working together. It's in fact one of the great things that you can do is to work together, because you have many tools to do this. And then you have a wide range of information, so it's a great moment to do research projects, to do interesting things, use new tools to understand how you can measure things on Google Maps, for example, how you can see what's the parameter of a country. So you have to apply things in a different way. You don't have to be stuck on what you could do with the materials from the classroom, because the materials are there to be a teacher, a guide. And if you can replace that guide with other tools in order to help the children, then you kind of follow the same ideas, but in a new environment that is different from the classroom. So you can separate them and make the children understand the value of what they have in the classroom. When you touch a material, that is not the same thing to touch the beads that you have in the classroom or a bean at home that you kind of made and painted. So it's a beauty in the material that you should appreciate, but at the same time, there are many other opportunities there. So you should take advantage of them, learn how to use these tools.
And what do you think about the use of technology? Was it like they had to use it longer than normally, or did they have to?
I think that it's okay. It's you have to understand that once you connect to the technology, there are pros and cons, and in everything you have to adjust yourself, because when you are exposed to a screen for 5 hours, then you maybe understand that's not what you want, because you maybe have a headache. So how can I balance this? How can I use the screen to get the information, but then I use my things like the paper, the things that I have at home to still work and create things, no? So you have to understand how to balance both. So this is why we didn't want to have the children connected to the screen for the whole day, for example, or I was not connected for the whole day, creating this availability for them to always go back to screen.
Okay.
We had moments where they could connect, and some of them, when we had an interview with the children at the end of this period as well. So we asked them what was the worst thing about, or what they learned during this period. And then one of them said, like, I had to learn how to manage my screen time. So there you go.
Wow.
It's something that you can learn from everything.
Yeah. And actually that was one of the questions, let's say. How do you think, because we talked at the beginning, at the moment when you had to make this decision to go to the online teaching, but when it got like kind of normalized, this online teaching, how did you find it?
I found it enriching, and I think all the children found it the same way. They found that there were like good things there. Yes, everyone missed their friends. This was the question that received the most similar answers. Like, what did you miss? My friends. But we try to kind of bring that to them. You know that one of the aspects of let me just think this before.
Yes.
So it's important to understand what the human being needs. So if the children need the social aspect, you have to kind of bring it there, even if it's not in the same way in like being present, but you can still do it. So for example, we had the social gathering every week where children would connect and they would just chat about anything. Oh, wow. And this was their own time to kind of understand. It's like was exactly the same moment in the classroom that they had. They were sitting in the circle and just talking about their own things. And the guide was there, but the guide was there like only with, I was not there. I was there to create the meeting, but I was not there to go into their conversations or to listen to them. So I gave them this privacy, and they had this space where they could connect. Of course, later they learned by themselves that they could connect in so many other ways over internet. And then they created their small groups like they would do in normal life, like in real life at school. So they started to chat and to have conversation, which was also great.
Yes. And then the last question, what do you think is the future of education? Will it be virtual? Talking about Montessori education. Do you think it's going to be virtual or it's going to still be?
I think that education
Yeah. Like if we can choose both virtual and in the class, do you think it's going to be virtual?
No, I do not think that it's going to be virtual because the idea of virtual education it does not really make a lot of sense at this time, especially for this age group. Maybe if we discuss about university, maybe we can have different ideas about that, how it could be semi-presential, like share online and presential, to be at school, present at school. But when it comes to this age group, 6 to 12, I think it's very important to be together. And there is a great value in this. Can we introduce parts of the things that we've learned that are good with technology in the classroom? Can we have one area in the classroom which is related to technology? Maybe this is an answer that we say yes now after this experience and understanding how the world works, because this is some important aspect of the life today to learn how to be online. And this is something that Maria Montessori, when she started, she did not think about this because there was no need for this. Yeah. But as you can see in her way of looking at education, she always looked at the human being and what the human being needed in order to give him education or to make it accessible for him. He had questions about the sun. She created charts about the sun and how it was the sun compared to the earth. But now the children have other questions regarding about internet. How can I connect? What can I do there? Where should I go to find this answer? So we should make available these answers to them or a way for them to discover education through technology.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your participation.
Yes, thank you. My name is Xavier Barameda. I'm from the Philippines. I've been in Montessori for about 10 years now. I got my AMI elementary back in 2010 in Milwaukee. And then I finished my 3 to 6 training in St. Louis with Dr. Haynes back in 2018. And then last year, 2019, I took the adolescent orientation in Ohio. For my work experience, I was able to get a job in California for 5 years, right straight out of my training. But then I went back home to the Philippines to help out with the family business. Because you see, my family runs a system of Montessori schools back in the Philippines. We have 13 campuses in the Philippines, all over the country, and we serve about 1,400 children, ages, I do believe we go from 18 months all the way to 18 years old. Okay. So we have the complete program, and when I went back home to the Philippines, I was put in charge with 2 of the 13 campuses.
Okay, so you can ask our first question from a different perspective, let's say, because I want to ask, how was the passage from classroom teaching to online teaching when you had to close the school for the coronavirus?
Oh yeah, I remember those days. It was March, and we were already hearing in the Philippines that Hong Kong had shut down its schools, and China, of course, was also one of the first few countries to shut their schools down.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was looking at the news online, I knew it was only a matter of time before the virus would reach the Philippines.
Hmm.
So even though our government hadn't imposed any travel bans yet and lockdowns, I started thinking to my head what would happen if this was going to go online. So I started thinking about the principles of what needs to be done, and I started telling my guides, look, the virus is spreading rapidly and it's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it reaches us, and then schools will be the first to close down because they see schools as a place where the virus easily spreads.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the first institutions to shut down will be the schools. And so my guide started thinking, what will happen if tomorrow or next week my children aren't able to come to school anymore? So that helped prepare them for the not to be shocked when the lockdown issues were announced in the Philippines.
Yeah.
But that was just really for the two campuses that I was directing, because the lockdowns in the Philippines didn't happen as a whole nation. It started city by city. And my schools were in the cities where the lockdowns were first announced.
Oh.
So we had a head start with the rest of the country. But 2 days before the announcement of the lockdown, we were already calling people, asking what was going to happen. We were calling other schools and seeing how they were preparing. But 2 days before the announcement of the lockdown, we did not hold any classes anymore, because I
Huh.
told them I wanted to spend the days before a possible lockdown just meeting with my teams and getting together as many online resources as we can.
Okay.
So lockdown was announced on March 16, which was a Wednesday, I believe. Monday and Tuesday, we were just in one room. You
Hmm.
know, some of them were looking at worksheets. Other people were looking at online materials. Other people were creating materials that could be sent home to the children. You know, basically what was guiding us all for the first few weeks really was, how do we keep the children's education continuing?
Yeah.
And the focus really was academic at first,
Mm-hmm.
because the children needed to feel a sense of, they needed to keep we felt that they needed to keep busy for the first few days to get some work going on in their homes, as the stresses and anxiety of the lockdowns
Yeah.
was going on, because they could see that in their parents. That's what they were hearing on the news. So we wanted to be able to give them activities, and it wasn't really just worksheets. We were looking at home activities you can do in the home, experiments, handcrafts that they could do. We started drawing up a list of practical life activities that they could do in the home as well. But we know that we couldn't afford not to give them academics as well.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to ask you, was there a big difference between the first stage of development and the second stage, like children's house and elementary children? Do you think it was a...
Yes, for
Mhm.
the children's house, it really was based on a lot of sensorial games and extensions. We were lucky because March was almost the tail end of our school year anyway.
Yeah.
So we started planning out sensorial activities, and we've already oriented the homes on what practical life activities the children could do. But then we thought of other activities that they can continue to do at home in terms of practical life and applying it. And then
Mhm.
for the 5-year-olds, we were still able to prepare some materials for them to be able to continue language and math work.
Mhm.
those were picked up by the parents maybe a day or two after lockdown was announced. Luckily, one of my guides took her parent community shopping for practical life exercises,
Oh.
knowing that there is a possibility of a lockdown. And that happened, I think, a week before the lockdown happened. They got together as a parent community and they went shopping for little trays, cups, dishes, pitchers.
So you were really prepared.
For the elementary, more or less, it really helped that I communicated to my teachers that this was a big possibility. And as I was continuing to update myself on what was going on with the rest of the world, I kept telling them, you have to start thinking about this. You have to start thinking about this. So when it was announced, it didn't come as a surprise to them. Not to say that it made the work easier, because online teaching really is very, very difficult, but they weren't in a state of shock.
Yeah, which is really important. And do you think Montessori material can be replaced?
Montessori,
Classroom, I mean, yeah.
if we're talking for the elementary, we found digital interactive materials that have been working pretty well. But again, it has to go through that stage of abstraction. So the digital interactive materials work well for the older children. But surprisingly, even the 5 and 6-year-olds were able to adapt to it. Now, of course, they can manipulate things online, and I guess that's their generation. They know a 2-year-old knows how to unlock a phone and look at it the right way, right side up. But surprisingly, what was important was they had the previous experience of holding the material and working with the material on their hands. And that's what made the transition to a virtual material a lot easier.
Yeah.
But so that has to be the starting point. They really need to have worked with the material beforehand. You can't just introduce it online per se.
Okay. Yes. And what about the communication with the parents? Did you have to teach parents in order to be able to teach their children?
Yeah, our school holds parent events, but majority of I wouldn't say majority, but there are parents who do not attend these events, and they're the ones who were least prepared to have their children with them in their homes. For those that do regularly attend the parent events, I would say that they had the advantage because they know what it is to be able to respect the children's activities. So what we did was we sent out a series of documents to the parents, first explaining to them what their children's characteristics are. And we were warning them basically on what to expect and how their children would behave at home, because we were able to observe, and that all of this was based on our observations of their children while they were in the classroom. But at the same time, I told my guides, the number of students you have will double or triple because you're also going to have to teach the parents.
Okay.
Because we know in Montessori that what is necessary is to have a trained adult.
Yes.
And so my guides, in addition to meeting with their children online, they had to meet with the parents as well. Sometimes one-on-one, sometimes as a group, to discuss a particular principle, to discuss their concerns. And that's what helped a lot, because we did not wait for parents to come up with us with concerns.
Okay.
We took the initiative and asked them, how are you doing? And based on what their answers were, we were able to then guide them using the principles on how best to lead their children to independence. But flat out, right from the start, we told them, It's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight.
Hmm.
But if you keep at it, your children will not need you anymore for their schoolwork. So you could see even children's house children knowing how to turn on their computers and being able to log in,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
because you have to just break it down and show it step by step.
Mm-hmm. And what about the use of technology for children's house? I mean, for the age, do you think they were using too much technology, or they were connecting too much, or did you keep it like some hours a day or some hours a week?
The what we had planned for the children were sessions of 15 minutes each, at
Mm-hmm.
most at most 20 minutes.
Okay.
So they would have a scheduled time that we would email to the parents for the children's house children, and they would meet for 15 minutes. And then we would try to engage with the children based on the lesson that we had in mind. But if
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't working, then we would take the lead of the children. If that
Okay.
child wanted to talk about animals, it would be animals for that day. And then we would just change what we had planned.
Mm-hmm.
But we also held a series of workshops telling the parents how much screen time will be needed by the children. And we did say that the limit for children for screen time for the 3 to 6 year olds would be no more than 2 hours consecutive.
Okay.
So the biggest challenge was creating independent activities that did not need to be done on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you find any good points, let's say, of the closure of teaching from home or coordinating your guides from home? Like, let's say, positive parts of the coronavirus. Were there any?
The biggest silver lining we had was it opened the parents' eyes to what it is that Montessori is actually able to do.
Okay.
Now that they have the children at home with them, parents who used to tell us, no, my child does not act like that, suddenly see, oh, my child does act like this. And the reports of the teachers were accurate. And when they saw those things happening at home, then they began to trust us more.
Okay.
That we weren't just out to get their children, and get them in trouble, but we wanted what was best for the children. And really, that's always the starting point with any relationship. You need to have a common focus and good communication.
Yes.
So parents who were in denial about their children's behaviors suddenly saw it, and we were able to communicate and teach them about Montessori much more. Aside from that, there is no other upside, I think.
Yeah.
But the more adults that we have who believe in the method and will practice it, I think it will be better for society as a whole.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your information. And I actually have a last question. Do you think the future of Montessori education will be the online teaching or the classroom, let's say?
As I mentioned earlier, what's important is that sensorial experience for them to base future experiences upon. But I also don't think that the virtual learning that's happening this year in this pandemic will be a good basis to make a decision like that, because coronavirus is one thing,
Yes,
but
exactly.
to add on to that, the parents having to work from home, the stresses of not knowing when the lockdown will end, parents losing jobs, those all compound the children's psychological development also. So right now we're not at a stable place to really gauge whether online teaching should be the norm or not because of all these other factors.
Yes.
A big thing that is lost with the virtual classrooms would be social interactions. In-person social interactions that we know is vital. We've tried to replace them because we've had a platform wherein children can actually, from the same class, can call each other. Much like you and I are doing right now.
Yes.
So it's a safe platform that's secure, and the children can work on their schoolwork together by just calling each other. And with that, we've had to teach them, grace and courtesy. You can't just type random letters across the screen. And if you do want to call someone, you have to send them a message first, all those things. But, I really think that in person, there's something lost when you're connecting online that cannot be replaced by in-person social interactions. So no, I don't think that virtual Montessori will replace,
Okay. Yes.
in-person Montessori.
Well, thank you so much. I also would like to share with you that when this transition happened, I was home in maternity leave, so I kind of half witnessed the online teaching. But what I can say is that teachers had to work more than ever before. They had a double task, teaching children and at the same time teaching parents, catching up the new learning management system that the school owner decided to use, trying to be creative for their children when presenting materials or lessons, and sometimes this extra work was not even enough appreciated. We can say that being tech savvy has become a requisite for online learning, as everyone tries to create a beautiful atmosphere according to their knowledge. Some even try to create a Bitmoji Montessori environment. Teachers felt supported in their transition to online teaching when the school director had a good understanding of the Montessori method and the ability to solve fast and effective the puzzle of children's, staff's, parents, and schools' needs. Besides the lessons, teachers had also to create appropriate conditions for online interaction, otherwise the focus would be redirected only on behavior. And talking about behavior, they had to set some behaviors expectation, creating a prepared environment where grace and courtesy could be applied in a different way for the digital world. That includes respect for self, such as keeping the hygiene and changing pajama before connecting, or respect for others, such as taking turns to talk. They had also to face the challenge of teaching by groups, or teaching the whole class at the same time in a way that no one would get bored. They had to set up a routine, observe, and improve things in order to respect children's needs. It has been an opportunity for parents to connect better with their children and also to understand better the Montessori philosophy. It has been hard also for parents, as some had double tasks too, as their role in educating their children was more than vital now. There's no substitute for learning in the classroom, where teachers can observe and guide children, but teachers and parents work hard to make learning and education happen. Depending on each stage of development, the technology can be more or less helpful. But we need to be grateful for its existence, as it was an important tool for communication and digital socialization that we sometimes take for granted. One of the main functions of the classroom is to make socialization happen, and with the lockdown, we become aware of its importance. Children miss their friends everywhere. That tendency of associating with others was not successfully replaced by the virtual environment. Education is also about community. We want our children to be inspired by and learn from others, and we know that they learn from their peers through observation and imitation. Lastly, I would like to add that Montessori education seeks the development of children as a whole, not only at the intellectual level. And we don't know what the future of education is going to look like. Maybe online teaching, in person, outdoors, but it's the whole that matters, and it's the whole in education, in Montessori education that has to be considered. Thank you everyone for listening to me. Bye.